The Albany Club, Canada's only private political club, has been here on King Street East for over a century. While landmarks around it like the King Eddie and St. James Cathedral easily stand out, the Albany Club elegantly awaits the privileged few who enter its doors.
Founded in 1882, the Albany Club celebrates its 125th anniversary in 2008. Over the years, its members have included the who's who of the Conservative Party.
There is something when you walk through the doors and when you walk into the rooms and you walk into the Sir John A. room and the Cartier room and the Premier Suite and the pictures on the walls that makes you feel a part of history. And I'm sure these walls can tell quite a story of the number of meetings over the years.
The Albany Club was named after Queen Victoria's fourth son, the Duke of Albany. The name was thought fitting because Sir John A. Macdonald had recently met the Duke while here visiting his sister, Princess Louise, the wife of Canada's Governor-General. As Prime Minister of Canada at the time, Sir John A. Macdonald served as the club's first and only honorary president.
I look upon him more as the inspiration than the founder. There had been a Conservative club called the United Empire Club on the north side of King Street, just west of Yonge. They spent too much money and they went bankrupt. And in the 1882 campaign, John A. missed the club in Toronto, and so he encouraged J. A. Macdonell, to his young associate, to get to work and found this club, which is what he did.
Since the Albany Club's inception, it has had 3 addresses. It was initially located at 75 Bay Street in a 3-story brick house referred to as Mrs. Dunlop's tenement. Today, Commerce Court West stands in the club's original location.
From Bay Street, the club moved to Colborne, the back of the King Eddie. On one side of us there was a blacksmith shop, and the other side was the first Grand & Toy retail store.
Although the Albany Club's Colborne Street address has long since vanished, the adjacent structure, which housed the Grand & Toy store, remains on the north side of Colborne and is now Tom Jones Steakhouse.
The club moved here in August 1898, and the south side of King Street was the high fashion area of Toronto and a mixed residential commercial with stores on the bottom and fine families upstairs in what was called Victoria Row.
In 1882, prominent Toronto architect John G. Howard designed the original Georgian-style building.
And this was a major commercial building for John Howard. 5 bays, 5 storefronts across on King Street, very fashionable King Street.
By raising the central unit and capping it with a pediment, Howard created a graceful focal point to counterbalance the building's rigid symmetry. In 1866, the building was renovated in the Second Empire style.
Principally, the most characteristic thing of it, of course, was the roof. The very large bulbous roof, usually a double slope roof, trimmed in slate with heavy curbing details. So it's a far more elaborate building than the Georgian was.
In 1897, just before the Albany was to move to Victoria Row, club member Vo Chadwick was hired to transform the commercial street front facade to a private space. He replaced the large storefront with smaller windows in keeping with the upper stories, finishing it with a stately entrance. In the 30s, Charles J. Gibson refaced 91 and 93 King Street East with limestone in order to unify the buildings. The installation of the Otis Fensom elevator, tucked neatly behind a door, continues to interest members and visitors alike.
Victoria Row, which we're part of, I think we're probably one of the last buildings that has maintained some of its heritage over the last 125 years.
The stained glass around the windows represents the provinces of Canada, and of course it was built before Newfoundland was a province. And so the dais above at the front of the club was introduced after Newfoundland became part of Confederation so that their coat of arms could be included.
The Sir John A. Macdonald Room is a warm salute to the first Prime Minister of Canada. It features Sir John A.'s club receipts, irreverent political cartoons, and memorabilia. At the back of the Sir John A. Room, doors open into the Meehan Lounge, a splendid library dedicated to Canada's 9th Prime Minister.
Not only is the Albany Club brimming with history and memorabilia, this long-standing club is a venue for social gatherings, meetings, and lively debate.
I was dumbfounded when I started doing my research about when Ontario Hydro was created to learn that every person involved in that great debate on every side of the issue were members of this club. Sir Adam Beck, whose statue is on University Avenue, but also the big financial interests, Mackenzie and Pellet, who owned Kesseloma, etc. So they were all here, and so the tension in the dining room must have been pretty tight at times.
Good, strong democracies are built upon a good competing debate on ideas and philosophies within a, whether it's NDP or Liberal or Conservative or whatever it is. And you need a place to nurture that, to support that.
Relationships are vital to the Albany, whose members are among Canada's foremost political, legal, and business minds. These connections shape the fate of the Conservative Party's political fortune.
There are so many interesting members, but I think the one most relevant to me would be Stephen Harper, because I did meet him here at the club 2 years ago for the Sir John A. Macdonald dinner. It's a members-only dinner, and he came and spoke as the guest speaker, so that was quite exciting.
One of the backroom people, the all-time greats who died recently, and it's the late Eddie Goodman. And he was always there at his table. And of course, everybody would come up to him almost as much as they would come up to the Premier. And he was a success in the law, in business, and in politics. And he had a great heart and backed a whole lot of candidates that I liked, and he backed me as he was my mentor when I first ran for elected office. And his law firm raised a great deal of the money that financed my first campaign.
I'd never belonged to a private club before. We don't have such things in North Bay, and I guess I'd maybe heard about them. So I didn't know what to expect. I was a little in awe, clearly, of the job and of the people involved in the Albany Club. But they made me feel at home very quickly, and it wasn't long before they asked me to be a representative of the Conservative caucus at Queen's Park.
To that end, they established the Pitt Society, a club within the club, named after William Pitt, who at 24 was the youngest Prime Minister in the history of England.
The Pitt Society is a group for the younger set of the club. It's from members 40 years of age and younger, and they produce events that are geared to incorporating them more into the club, into the older set. There's about 175 members under 40, and they all create the Pitt Society.
But I can remember back to the days when I joined Bill Davis's cabinet, and only male members were allowed. And I remember the Premier nominated one of our female cabinet colleagues,
Margaret Birch, who was the first female cabinet minister in Ontario, to be a member. And because you have to have a sponsor and a seconder and whatever. And I'm told there was a legendary board meeting at which this was debated about whether or not they should let women in the club. And I gather it was a classic performance between those who thought, for heaven's sakes, why are we even debating it? I mean, of course we should have women in the club. And those who trotted out a number of wonderful old arguments.
In 1979, Albany President William M. Bryden announced that women would be accepted as members.
We've had this long history of being part of the city, but you only have to look at the dinners we've had recently. We've had the Prime Minister of Canada here, we've had the Minister of Finance here. This club and this building are important fixtures, not just in Toronto, but in Canada.
I believe this club and this facility for the centuries ahead can provide a forum and an opportunity that I found for a quiet place, a thoughtful place, a place rich in history, while you're discussing items of importance for the future. And so as important as the history is in the past of this club, I'd like to think that the future will hold even more.
As the Albany Club forges ahead, it remains committed to its history while encouraging debate in order to meet the changes of tomorrow. By welcoming Canada's best and brightest, the Albany Club ensures its future will be as illustrious as its past.